meeting number 34 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. Today, we will continue our study on application backlogs and processing time. I would like to welcome our witnesses for our first panel. Thanks to all the witnesses for appearing before the committee and joining us today. We are joined today by Mr. LeBlanc, the President and Chief Executive Officer from Chamber of Commerce of Metropolitan Montreal. We are also joined by Luso Community Services, being represented by Irina Sompescio, Settlement Services Manager. And our third witness for today is Quebec Immigration Lawyers Association, being represented here today by their president, Stéphane Velos, and Ms. Krishna Gegane, lawyer and vice president for economic affairs. Once again, I welcome you all. All of you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, and then we will go into the round of questioning. Yes, Madam Clerk.
Monsieur Brunel Duceppe has his hand up in the room.
Yes, Mr.
Go ahead, Mr. I'll try to be quick. Madam Speaker, I just wanted to ensure that the sound tests were done with the witnesses as our routine motion provides. That was done? Okay. Thank you very much.
The clerk has told me that those have been done.
C'est fantastique.
Fantastic. Now, quickly, I don't want you to waste any time, but I'll be tabling a motion that all committee members have already received. And I wanted to say that pursuant to Standing Order 183B, the committee undertake a study as soon as possible on the conditions faced by asylum seekers using the irregular administrative path maintained by the Safe Third Country Agreement, that the committee consider the safety, security, and health of people and families of migrants who cross the Canada-United States border at Roxham Road in particular, that the committee hold no less than 5 meetings to hear witnesses, and that it report its findings and recommendations to the House. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Brunel Duceppe. Mr. Brunel Duceppe has moved a motion. Before we go, like I see Ms. Kwan has raised her hand, I just want to inform all the members that we have scheduled a subcommittee meeting for Tuesday, October 18th. So just for everyone's information that we can schedule in regards to what study needs to be done when in our subcommittee meeting. Ms. Kwan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I support the intent of the motion. However, I'd like to make the follow amendment to the motion. I'd like to change the 5 meetings to 3 meetings, and then to add the clause that, which is our standard clause, to say that the committee reports its finding to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 103, the government table comprehensive response thereto. I would really like to actually hear the government's response to it. And so, Madam Chair, I'll have my staff send the amendment to the clerk for distribution. And so, to be clear for the clerk, the changes will then mean that we'll strike out the word 5 and change it to 3. And so it would read, the committee hold no less than 3 meetings to hear witnesses. And then we strike out the word and continue with that. And then add the words the committee, strike out the word it. So it would read, the committee report its findings, and strike out the words and recommendations and then so it would continue to report its findings to the House, semicolon, and add the phrase, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the government table a comprehensive response thereto.
Thank you, Ms. Kwan. Now, Ms. Kwan has moved an amendment, so we have an amendment on the floor. I just want to apologize to all our witnesses for the delay in starting your opening remarks. A member has moved a motion, and then another member has moved an amendment, so we have to deal with it before we can go into opening remarks from you. So if you can be a little bit patient. Thank you.
Madame Lalonde.
Ms. Lalonde.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I just could I have clarification? Did Ms. Kwan says
old no more than 3 or old no less? I just didn't understand clearly. Sorry, I just want to make sure what language is she proposing?
Thank you, Ms. Lalonde. Ms. Kwan, if you can please clarify Ms. Lalonde's question.
Sorry, it should be no more than 3. I don't know if I misspoke or not. I apologize
No
if I did.
more than. So the amendment is that no more than 3.
C'est correct. C'est parfait pour moi. All good.
Any further discussion on the amendment moved by Ms. Kwan? Madam Clerk, if you can let me know if there are any hand raised in the room. No? Okay, so then no discussion. We can go into vote for that amendment. So all those in favor of the amendment moved by Ms. Kwan? All those against? Madam Clerk, is there anyone against?
No one against, no.
No one against. Okay, so the amendment is adopted. So we have the motion moved by Mr. Brunel Duceppe as amended by Ms. Kwan. Yes, Ms. Kwan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to say that after we finish this motion, I have another motion that I would like to move.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Ms. Kwan. Any further discussion on this motion as amended? No? All those in favor of the motion as amended by Ms. Kwan? Anyone against? No one? Okay, so the motion is adopted. Thank you. Ms. Kwan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move the following motion that the Standing Committee on Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship study the government's response to the final report of the Special Committee on Afghanistan entitled Honoring Canada's Legacy in Afghanistan, Responding to the Humanitarian Crisis and Helping People Reach Safety. Following the tabling of the report, that the committee invite the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, Minister of National Defense, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the Minister of Justice and Attorney General and their officials with 2 hours allotted for each department to provide an update on which of the 37 recommendations related to their portfolio they have acted on and or is progress, and which they will not implement with an explanation, and that the committee reports this finding to the House.
Madame Lalonde.
Ms. Lalonde.
I want to say thank you very much for the member, Mrs. Kwan, for her notice of motions that she's bringing forward. But as we are seeing witnesses awaiting us going forward to hear and continue on the great work of the study that we are having, I would like to move to adjourn debate.
Okay. It's a clear message. Thank you for that.
We have a motion to adjourn the debate. All those in favor? All those against? Madam Clerk, if can we take the vote so that...
Yes. Mr. Ali.
Yes.
Mr. Sidhu.
Oui.
Mr. El-Khoury.
Yes.
Ms. Diab.
Yes.
Madame Lalonde.
Yes.
Mr. Benson.
Against.
Mr. Janis.
No.
Mr. Halan.
No.
Mr. Redekop.
No.
Monsieur Brunel Duceppe.
No.
Ms. Kwan.
No.
6 nays, 5 yeas.
So the motion to adjourn the debate is defeated. So we have the motion moved by Ms. Kwan on the floor. Any discussion?
Madame Lalonde?
Ms. Lalonde.
Oui, écoutez,
Listen, first of all, I'd really like to apologize to all our witnesses who are here with us. It's very important for us to hear you. You're here today because we believe that our Parliament should function well, and I must unfortunately move an amendment that we will debate with regard to my colleague's motion. So once again, colleagues, please apologize. Please accept my apologies.
Pose, I know that this Standing Committee on Immigration and Refugee, and I know that there was a special committee, and that special committee, as I understand, Madam Chair, was over 6 months, and many of our current members on this particular committee were actually on this special committee. And when you think about Afghan and the circumstances and the initiative that were raised, it is heartbreaking. And I know that we are all collectively extremely, extremely sensitive on this issue. And there's measures that have been put in place. Actually, just yesterday, the government actually tabled his response to the report that was presented on the Special Committee of Afghanistan entitled Honoring Canada's Legacy in Afghanistan. So on that note, I think that, first of all, I hope that we will have the time to really go into reading over the course of the next week as we are in our constituency. And we have a chance to see the government response. And for that matter, what I would like to propose, possibly as an amendment, and I hope that my colleagues will support, is that we would have, following the tabling of the report, that the committee invite the Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship and the Minister of Justice with 1 hour each allocated for each department. So basically, we would, give me a second, Madam Chair. I'm looking at my notes, and I just want to make sure I say it properly for our analysts. So the way it works is that the committee invite the Minister of Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship, and the Minister of Justice, and their officials, with 1 hour allocated for each department to provide an update on which of the 37, and that would stay the same. So I would just like to remove some of those ministers, and I think as we are in the immigration IRCC that we would see, and I know that there's a particular interest from my colleagues who sort of made their own amendment, and Ministry of Justice comes, so I would like to propose those friendly amendments.
Okay, can you please provide that in both official languages?
I will certainly do this. Either we can suspend, and that would be forwarded to the attention of the clerk.
Ms. Kwan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just speaking quickly to the proposed amendment, I do not support it. I think that we need to have all the ministers stated in my original motion to come forward, because this is supposed to be a cross-government of a whole response to Afghanistan, and because of the significance and the seriousness of the situation in Afghanistan, I think that having the minister come for 1 hour and officials come for 1 hour is not too much to ask.
Mr. Sidhu?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe, from my memory, if it serves correct, a lot of the ministers did come to the special committee. I know there's progress being made on Afghanistan. We just recently welcomed, over 20,000. We hit the 20,000 target, where there's new flights coming every week or so. And I think there's progress being made, and we've heard from ministers as well on this file already. But out of respect for witnesses that took time out of their busy schedules to join us today, I would ask that, I know we have subcommittee next week, I believe on Tuesday, that this discussion be taking place there so we can hear from our witnesses here today. I mean, we have to respect their time. We want to hear from them. We invited them here, and I think it's important that we do hear from them today.
Thank you, Mr. Sidhu. Do all the members have been able to get the amendment, or they want an amendment in both official languages? We have a hand raised from Mr. Al-Khouri. Mr. Al-Khouri.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I would like to ask my colleague through you. I don't know why the rush. We have made a tremendous job regarding Afghanistan for several months. There is a report. And why don't we wait until we receive the understanding, analyzing, and then we could go further and give our opinion and to see if it's suitable to invite those ministers or not. But reading of the report, receiving it, it's essential for us for this as a committee. Thank you.
Okay. So I think Ms. Lalonde will send her amendment to the clerk in both official languages. So we will suspend for 3-4 minutes so that every member can get it in both official languages. So,
Monsieur Brunel-Dessep.
Mr. Brunel-Dessep.
Oui, juste.
I would also like to apologize to the witnesses for what they're going through right now, but we could, if we wanted, just vote immediately. We already know everyone's position. This won't change by next Tuesday. There won't be any changes. So I propose that I move that we vote immediately. As we've done for the first motion, it took us 5 minutes only. And then the witnesses will be able to take part in the committee. Our positions won't change between now and Tuesday, so we could vote already. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Chair, rather.
I agree with my friend, Alexis. I think that we should just go to a vote for this one and Ms. Kwan's proposed motion as well. I think everyone's pretty clear on their position.
Mr. Sidhu.
Madam Chair, I propose we suspend for a few minutes until we wait the written language.
Okay, so let this come to all the members in both official languages. Ms. Lalonde, please send it to the clerk. I'll suspend the meeting for a few minutes so that we have the amendment in both official languages. The meeting is suspended. I just want to apologize to all the witnesses. Sorry for the delay. We will try to resume as soon as possible. So the meeting is suspended. I hope all the members have received the amendment moved by Ms. Lalonde in both official languages. So we have amendment moved by Ms. Lalonde on the floor. Any debate? Any member who would like to speak to the amendment? Madam Clerk, any hands raised in the room? Okay, seeing no further debate, if we can take a vote, Madam Clerk, if you can please take a vote on the amendment moved by Ms. Lalonde.
Mr. Ali.
Yes.
Mr. Sidhu.
Yes.
Monsieur El Khoury.
Yes.
Ms. Diab.
Yes.
Madame Lalonde.
Yes.
Mr. Benson.
No.
Mr. Janis.
No.
Mr. Halan.
No.
Mr. Redekop.
No.
Monsieur Brunel Duceppe.
Mr. Brunel Duceppe.
No.
6 nays, 5 yeas.
The amendment is defeated. So we have
Madame
the
Lalonde.
motion. Ms. Lalonde.
Madam Chair, I thank you very much. And maybe I was not, I don't know, maybe I didn't quite understand the sentiment that's expressed by my colleagues, but maybe we could possibly propose an amendment fairly similar to the one that my colleague has received, but instead of 1 hour, and I think that's being fair, we should have stick with what my colleague Mrs. Kwan wanted to see would be 2 hours. So the proposed amendment would be that we would invite the Minister of Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship and the Minister of Justice for 2 hours instead of my 1 hour that I made as a proposal.
So it is like with 2 hours allocated for each department?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, can you please repeat your amendment so that everyone can get that?
Definitely, and je vais le dire en français.
And I'll say it in French. That the Standing Committee on Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship study the government's response to the final report on the Special Committee on Afghanistan entitled Honoring Canada's Legacy in Afghanistan, Responding to the Humanitarian Crisis and Helping People Reach Safety, following the tabling of the report, that the committee invite the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship and the Minister of Justice, with 2 hours allocated for each department to provide an update on which of the 37 recommendations related to their portfolio they have acted on and or its progress, and which they will not implement, with an explanation, and that the committee report its findings to the House.
Thank you, Ms. Lalonde. Ms. Kwan, we have an amendment on the floor moved by Ms. Lalonde. Ms. Kwan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just speak to this very quickly. I'm opposed to this amendment. What the government is trying to do is water down the number of ministers to come before the committee or the time with their officials to come before the committee. Given the gravity of the situation where Afghans and their family members, those who serve this country, are being hunted down by the Taliban as we speak right now, and some have actually disappeared already, surely we can find a few hours within this committee to hear the government's response, to which they only just tabled yesterday. I read the response. I think that the families who serve our country deserve this hearing from this committee, and for us to get some answers on the recommendations that was tabled by the Special Committee on Afghanistan. The government said that they have taken a whole of government approach. The minister just today in question period said he's doing everything they can. Then they should not have any problems whatsoever to come before this committee to speak to committee members on this important issue. And all these amendments, frankly, the Liberals is just trying to delay time of the passage of my motion, and frankly, squandering the time for witnesses to present on the current study. I'm opposed to this amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Kwan. Mr. Sidhu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree it's an important topic. That's no doubt about it. I think the situation in Afghanistan, is at the top of our priorities. But I think what the member opposite is proposing, she's proposing, I think, close to 8 hours or 6 hours. We're saying let's be reasonable here. Yes, we don't mind ministers coming to speak to this. We have no objections about that. But be reasonable, because there's many other immigration topics that members want to discuss as well. So I think that's an amendment that's reasonable, that's put forward by my colleague. But again, I want to make sure it's on the record that, listen, we're not saying it's not a priority. It is a priority, a top priority for our government. And that's why we're continuing to work on the file. But I think it's also important that we be reasonable with so many other immigration issues that are out there. And that's why we have witnesses to speak to some of the other issues that are out there.
I have hands in the room, Madame Zayed.
Yeah, who is it?
It's Monsieur Brunel-Duceppe, then Mr. Hallan, then Madame Lalonde.
Okay, Mr. Brunel-Duceppe.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm really sorry, witnesses. We could have solved this matter in 2 minutes. I'll try to make us save a little time. I think the amendment we've just received is too similar to the previous one, and therefore is not admissible to the initial motion. Let's save time, and the witnesses will be able to take part in the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Hallan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There have been things that have come to light after that report came out from the Afghan committee. So I think Ms. Kwan's motion is very concise, very clear. We need to continue to stand up for those that are being persecuted, because a lot of them have been exempt and continue to be hunted down by the Taliban. So I say that instead of delaying more and more and putting up motions that are very similar to one another just to delay more time, let's just get to Ms. Kwan's motion, and let's respect the witnesses that are here.
Thank you, Mr. Hallan. Ms. Lalonde.
With all due respect to my colleagues, actually, that's why my first thought was for our witnesses at the very beginning. C'était vraiment pour vous, chers témoins.
I was really thinking of you, witnesses. The reason why we're having this discussion today is that when we're talking about all the priorities for our committee, if we look at what my colleague is proposing, well, what she's proposing will take a lot of time, and I'm somewhat surprised. We've studied the refusal of international students. We're currently examining a report with you as students, as witnesses on delays, and we've spoken here as a committee that we want to advance our motion so that we can continue our reports in the coming months, rather. We've spoken to Mr. Brunel-Duceppe about his motion. I don't think my colleagues understand what our committee colleague is asking. It will be excessively time-consuming. I'm not saying at all, I would never say that the Afghanistan situation is not important. But I believe that we want to help the committee with other issues that are important to us here in the committee. And this amendment, that I believe very small, my amendment, would allow us to move forward with Ms. Kwan's motion, and perhaps we could undertake other studies in this session and in the coming one. So I'm a bit surprised by what's going on. I'm being fully transparent and candid here. When I make this proposal, there are a lot of issues in the immigration file. Afghanistan is important. All countries are important. It was not, Madam Chair, to offend anyone that I proposed this amendment. It's just with the idea that we have a lot of work on the table, studies and other, as a committee. And we've already taken 6 months, and the ministers have appeared. I'm not saying that the answers are right or not. We could have 2 ministers come for 2 hours each, and we could continue our work as parliamentarians on this committee, and that's why I made this amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Lalonde. Any further debate? Any further? Okay, seeing none. Madam Clerk, if you can please take the vote on the amendment.
Mr. Ali?
We are voting
yes.
in regards to the amendment moved by Ms. Lalonde, just to clarify.
Yes.
Mr. Sidiou?
Yes.
Mr. El-Khoury?
Yes.
Ms. Diab?
Yes.
Madame Lalonde?
Oui.
Mr. Benson?
No.
Mr. Jenis?
No.
Mr. Halan?
No.
Mr. Redekop?
No.
Monsieur Brunel-Duceppe?
No.
Ms. Kwan?
No.
6 nays, 5 yeas.
Okay, so the amendment is defeated. So we have the motion moved by Ms. Kwan on the floor. Any debate on the motion?
Madame Lalonde?
Ms. Lalonde.
I just want to reiterate to my colleagues that this motion is significantly important, but the amount of time that this committee may be posed to could impact other very important study that we would like to go forward. So like I say, I don't dispute the rationale, the importance. I'm just trying to be practical and pragmatic. Merci.
Any, Mr. Sidhu?
Yes, Madam Chair, and going back to what my colleague said, the importance of witnesses taking the time to be here. Look, we all knew witnesses were scheduled to be here at this meeting. We also know on Tuesday we're going to have a subcommittee discussion on anything that the members want to talk about. I just don't understand why are we wasting the witnesses' time when this is such a substantial motion that's been put forward. I think we need to talk it through. We need to look at it more in depth. We've seen over 21,000 folks from Afghanistan now arrived in our country. We're making progress, but I do believe it's important. It's a priority to talk about it, but I think this is not the right time to do it. I think we need to be aware. All of us knew the schedule. We all knew witnesses were coming today, but for some reason, some members on this committee decided to bring a motion today, even though knew we can talk about it on Tuesday. So if you're saying yes, we can rush through it, that's not the way I think it's not practical. We all know that there's many other discussions, many other studies to be had. There's many different points of immigration that we need to discuss with many different witnesses on many different motions. But pushing this forward just because you knew witnesses are going to be here today, I don't think that's sincere. I think we need to wait till Tuesday and carry on this discussion.
Sorry. Mr. Brunel-Duceppe and then Mr. Ali. Mr. Brunel-Duceppe.
Ouais, excusez-moi, ça me fait un petit peu.
I'm sorry. It's funny to see the Liberals blaming us. We all know how we're going to vote. We're going to vote the exact same way Tuesday. Witnesses, I apologize. And I think you've realized which party is taking up all your time. They know how it's going to end. I just wanted to set the record straight. We all know how we're going to vote. I think we should vote immediately and let the witnesses speak. Thank you.
Mr. Ali and then Mr. El-Khoury. Mr. Ali.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with MP Sidhu. We all knew we were going to listen to witnesses, and this meeting was scheduled for that. And I think we could have brought these motions after listening to witnesses. And I feel sorry for our witnesses, and I apologize. And I realize that their time is important. They have taken the time out to join this meeting, and we got into this situation. My suggestion to all my colleagues, let's listen to witnesses first, and then we can get into this business of the motions. I hope all my colleagues will consider my request. Thank you so much.
Mr. El-Khoury?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Chair. I don't feel comfortable when we have witnesses accepting to come here to aid this committee and to put value in order to continue our study. So bringing this motion with the presence of the witness here, I don't think was the right thing to do. My suggestion to you, Mr. Chair, is to adjourn the debate on the motion by respect of our witness, and let's go to hear them. Thank you.
We have a motion to adjourn the debate. Madam Clerk, if you can please take the vote.
Mr. Ali,
Yes.
Mr. Sidhu,
In favor?
Mr. El Khoury,
Yes.
Ms. Diab,
Yes.
Madame Lalonde,
Yes.
Mr. Benson,
No.
Mr. Janus,
No.
Mr. Halan,
No.
Mr. Redekop,
No, ma'am.
Monsieur Brunel Duceppe,
No.
Ms. Kwan.
No.
6 nays, 5 yeas.
The motion to adjourn the debate is defeated. We have Ms. Kwan's motion on the floor. Ms. Kwan, have you made any amendment to your motion?
I did not make any amendments to my motion. I read the amendment, read the motion
The
as
motion,
it should
yeah.
be put.
So we have the motion moved by Ms. Kwan on the floor. Any debate on the motion? Okay, Madam Clerk, if we can take the, if there are no hands raised in the room, if we can, Mr. Ali.
Yes, Madam Chair. Can we read that motion again, please, just to clarify? Thank you.
Ms. Kwan, if you can please read the motion.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to read the motion. It's also been sent to all MPs to their P9 account, so they should be able to get that accordingly. I'll just pull up the motion here on my computer.
I will forward.
Okay, the motion will read as follows. That the Standing Committee on Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship study the government's response to the final report of the Special Committee on Afghanistan entitled Honoring Canada's Legacy in Afghanistan, Responding to the Humanitarian Crisis and Helping People Reach Safety, following the tabling of the report, and that the committee invite the Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship, Minister of National Defense, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Minister of Justice and Attorney General and their officials with 2 hours allotted for each department to provide an update on which of the 37 recommendations related to their portfolio that they have acted on or is progress, and which they will implement with an explanation, and that the committee report its findings to the House.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
Can I get a clarification, please?
Who's asking for clarification? Ms.
Diab, yes.
Yes, Ms. Diab.
All right, 2 things. One, I don't have it, but I appreciate you reading it. But I do have a question, and I just sort of clued in. So the motion is to have, is this the same motion, is to have no more than 3 meetings?
No.
Oh, so I don't know how many meetings this one is because you've got four departments coming for 2 hours each. So I guess how many meetings are you proposing? Or is that in the motion? I mean, other committees I've sat on, there's always a time frame. And I didn't receive it, so, that's fine, but I'm just saying. I'd like to know if I'm voting on something. Since I'm substituting for an individual, I feel I have the right to have the information in front of me.
Madam Clerk, can you please email it to all the members? Ms. Diab, just to clarify, there is no mention of the number of the meetings in the motion. Madam Clerk, if you can please send it to Ms. Diab before we vote on the motion.
I've received it now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any debate? Madam Clerk, if you can please take the vote on the motion moved by Ms. Kwan.
Mr. Ali.
I abstain from voting.
Mr. Sidhu.
I abstain. I don't know enough about this. I think we need to continue talking about it, but I will abstain just out of principle.
Mr. El Khoury.
Abstention.
Ms. Diab.
Abstain as well. Thank you.
Madame Lalonde.
I will abstain.
Mr. Benson.
Yes.
Mr. Jenas.
Yes.
Mr. Halan.
Yes.
Mr. Redekop.
Yes.
Mr. Brunel-Duceppe.
Oui.
Ms. Kwan.
Yes.
6 yeas.
Thank you. The motion is adopted.
Just a point of order, Madam Chair.
Mr. Jenas.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor the point, but it is an important issue that voting is not the time to offer rationale for voting. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Jenas. Okay, so seeing no further hands raised, we can go to our witnesses who have been very patient in waiting to give their opening remarks. We will shorten the time. So based on the time like we have left now, like we have about 70 minutes for this panel and the second panel. So we will try to shorten the time for both the panels. I can please ask the witnesses to start. So we will start with Mr. LeBlanc, the President and the Chief Executive Officer for the Chamber of Commerce of Metropolitan Montreal. Mr. LeBlanc, you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. You can please begin.
Alors, bonjour.
Hello. Usually I'd start by thanking the committee for inviting me today. I'd say that in the past, I've been witnessing for 13 years, and you've been the least respectful committee, and you, Madam Chair, have had the least control of your committee members. I'm blown away, and I'll tell you that I come from the on behalf of the business community, when I think of the delays in processing immigrant applicants, I will be inspired by this experience in my future speeches. Obviously, we're talking about economic issues, societal issues. You saw that in the Quebec election results. We are also talking about a labor shortage. This is preventing our businesses from growth, from economic development. Therefore, there is a large number of vacant positions in Quebec, in the Quebec economy. Immigration could be a solution to this labor shortage. Clearly, there is a major issue for us with this tremendous delay in application processing, sometimes caused by Quebec, sometimes caused by Canada, whether it comes to temporary workers or other applicants. The current situation creates an incredible amount of confusion. That means that there is a lack of accountability both from Canada and Quebec. Business people are calling me to say they don't know who is responsible for what, which level of government, and there's also the reflex of both levels of government to refuse to accept responsibility, claiming that it's the other level of government that is responsible for delays that businesses and applicants experience. A few words on temporary foreign workers. It is absolutely essential. It is an essential program for us. There are unacceptable delays from the moment that businesses identify these temporary workers. The delays can last 1 year much too long. The idea behind this program was to respond to immediate needs with skilled and available resources. It is unacceptable that the government takes so long to process these applicants once they've been selected. Obviously, there is the question of transitioning to permanent immigration, and once again there is an incredible delay in Quebec, an 11-month to be selected, and it takes 24 months, additional months, before the federal government approves a permanent residency application. So it's crazy that it takes so long in Quebec. It's even worse that it's 24 months from the Canadian government as well. This is why temporary foreign workers in Quebec move elsewhere in Canada to speed up the permanent residency process. We recognize that the federal government has earmarked extra money for these problems and has committed to hiring additional resources. Efforts have been made, but results must be seen. And currently, by the end of the year, it's said that the number of names on the waiting list will be reduced by 80%. We think there should currently be, in the next 6 months, efforts to eliminate all delays. What we want from the federal government is clarity on the processes, the guarantee of results when it comes to residency permits, the processing of Quebec experience applicants, and clarity for citizens and businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. LeBlanc. We will now move to LUSO Community Services, and we have Ms. Irina Sompescu, the Settlement Services Manager. Ms. Sompescu, you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Irina Sompescu, and I'm the Settlement Services Manager with LUSO Community Services in London, Ontario. Thank you for having me here today to share my feedback with respect to the experience and challenges that newcomers currently face with immigration applications processing times. LUSO is a neighborhood resource center with a variety of programs that support the needs of vulnerable and marginalized communities, including newcomers and immigrants of all immigration categories. Through our settlement services programs, newcomers can access information and assistance to help them make informed decisions about their and their family's settlement. We have assisted individuals with various types of settlement needs, such as finding suitable and affordable housing, accessing healthcare and other services in their community, finding employment and volunteer opportunities, as well as providing newcomers with information on various immigration applications. Over the past few years, we have had a high number of clients who have sought assistance with the citizenship application process. While guiding newcomers through the process, we have observed quite a significant variability with the processing times. We have had clients who have submitted their applications for citizenship in 2019 and early 2020, and yet have still not received a response or any update on their applications. The pandemic has had a significant impact on newcomers' lives on so many levels. It has also affected service delivery and operations of agencies, businesses, and service providers. IRCC has been attentive and proactive with resuming pre-COVID processing times by hiring many new staff to help reduce the backlogs. We have seen that in the recent period, processing times have indeed reduced, with citizenship applications submitted in late 2021 or early 2022 being processed with pre-COVID processing times. However, there are still many applications in the inventory with no response or any update provided to the applicants regarding the status or any potential issues with their citizenship applications. In addition, it has been quite challenging for individuals to connect with an agent from IRCC call center throughout different times of the day within business hours. When they call, individuals are not even placed in the queue to wait for an agent to become available, but rather they are disconnected from the call with a message that all agents are currently busy and to try to call again later. It is important to state that the backlogs and delays with processing times have had a major impact on the most vulnerable high-risk applicants, such as refugee claimants. Due to IRCC's limited capacity to process applications timely because of COVID, refugee claimants are facing significant delays to receive their refugee protection claimant documents, to attend an interview, and to receive their work permit. While waiting, they can access limited supports and services. However, these are individuals who have experienced unimaginable hardships and are in a situation where they have very few rights and options. While every refugee claimant has faced their own unique challenges, they all have experienced great obstacles and adversities, are separated from their families, and therefore are in strong need of access to support, care, and financial stability. So I have few recommendations for tackling these issues and reducing the backlogs in immigration applications. IRCC has recently announced its ongoing work and commitments to strengthen Canada's immigration system and to reduce application backlogs and delays. As part of the plan, IRCC has hired over 1,000 new employees. Through my work with newcomers, I have seen that this has already helped increase the processing capacity, as more recent applications have been processed with pre-COVID processing times. While this is the right step in the right direction, further work is necessary to have more agents available through the call center, where applicants can have an opportunity to speak with an agent, ask questions, and receive information and an update on their file, as not being able to contact IRCC to receive updated information has been quite concerning and challenging for many individuals and their families. It would also be beneficial to have additional staffing resources allocated specifically to processing applications from 2019 and 2020. Resuming with in-person citizenship tests and in-person oaths of citizenship ceremonies would also help expedite the processing times of citizenship applications, as there are many applicants who miss the ceremony or have to retake the test due to technical glitches at the time of the session. And lastly, allocating staffing resources to prioritize work permit applications for refugee claimants would tremendously help alleviate the stress and financial challenges that they face during the initial resettlement period in Canada. Without these vital resources and tools, refugee claimants are at much higher risk of homelessness and other hardships that could further affect their life and health. Thank you for listening and for giving me the opportunity to join the meeting today and share my feedback and recommendations.
Thank you. We will now proceed to Quebec Immigration Lawyers Association, and we have with us President Ms. Velois. Ms. Velois, you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. You can please begin.
Bonjour. Hello. The Quebec Association of Immigration Lawyers is the biggest French language lawyer association in Canada. We have more than 450 lawyers, essentially immigration lawyers. As you know, delays have a major impact on applicants, no matter what process they've undertaken. Immigration files have a major impact on their life, and the current delays make them very vulnerable. We would like to talk about three major issues: the delays and especially the unfairness in how files are processed. Second, the lack of transparency and foreseeability. And third of all, communications with IRCC, how to reduce the number of web forms and the workload of MPs' offices. And I'll ask Krisha Gagné, our VP, to speak to you first. I'll start immediately with delays and the unfairness of these delays. These delays are not only very long, but as I've mentioned, they're unfair. Files are submitted for a specific program in 2019, for example, still haven't been processed, whereas those submitted in 2022 have been. So this is unfair when it comes to processing. This brings us to our second point. The guidelines that provide for 80% of files being processed within the targets means that there are 20% of files that have not been processed. We don't know how long it will take for them to be processed. We don't know the status of them. That's 1 out of every 5 files. And these files, therefore, are not treated to the rule of first come, first served. There's no fairness in the way these files are processed. The last person to arrive may receive their response first, even if another person applied a year earlier. These delays have major consequences for the applicants, but also for businesses and teaching establishments. Here are a few examples. Permanent residency cards, for example. If someone does not receive their residency, and these delays are astronomical, well, often these cards, the permanent residency status does not arrive at the same time to all members of the family. So a child might receive the permanent residency status, but not the rest of the family. And there's no service standard for this type of processing. This means the entire family can't leave Canada until they've all received their permanent residency card. There are also delays with regard to renewing work permits. Usually the delay is about 6 months, but it's random still. And this has an impact because someone may perhaps apply for the renewal, but because the delay is so long, the current permit may run out, may expire, and the person must regain their status. That takes 6 to 9 months before a response is received. And during that time, the person cannot work, is not eligible for health insurance or other social services, even in the case of psychological distress. This creates a situation of tremendous vulnerability due to delays in the system. So these people were not vulnerable, and they're made vulnerable by the system. And this happens frequently. Within a business, if somebody wants to move to a different position or receive a promotion, cannot do so immediately, must wait for the application to be processed, once again, 5 to 6 months. This means that immediate promotions are being prevented, raises as well, within the same business, within one single employer. There's also the question of student visas. The student will receive a letter of acceptance in the month of February. That's the normal standard. And immediately the person will apply for a one moment, please. Your time is up. You can wind up. Well, I just wanted to quickly say that there's a real lack of immigration from IRCC. We don't have a contact person. We can simply send web forms. They clog up the system simply because we don't have a contact person to discuss files with. And web forms take about 2 months to be processed, which means that we have decisions that have been made without knowing it.
Community, like once we go into round of questioning. So we have heard from the 3 witnesses for our first panel. I have 2 options for the members. Please let me know which way you would like to proceed. One option is that we have like a 5-minute round for each party and then end this panel and then bring the witnesses. We have 2 witnesses for the second panel. The other option is that we hear from the other 2 witnesses also. We have one witness by video conference and the other witness is in the room. And then we can go into round of questioning and based on the time we have available. So please let me know how the members would like to proceed.
Madam Chair, can I just ask, are we able to extend at the back end or do we have a hard stop?
No, we have a hard stop at 3:05. So option 1, to have a 5-minute round and end this panel and then start the second panel, or option 2, that we hear.
Mr. Halan?
Mr. Halan, yes?
We're good with option 1.
Option 1. Okay. I see. Anyone for option 2? No? Okay. So we will have a 5-minute round of questioning from each party. We will start with our first member, Mr. Benson. Mr. Benson, you will have 5 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to all the witnesses. for being here on Friday afternoon, just in the beginning of a long weekend. We really appreciate you being here today. And I want to also apologize for the long delay it took to get to this point. I listened to all of you speak, and I have empathy for all of the things that you said. I do want to point out, though, one thing just quickly, and that is that I want to defend our chair. Our chair does an excellent job. She's been very fair, but she does have processes and procedures she has to follow. And unfortunately, that's just how it turned out today. But she has done a very good job since I've been on the committee, and I applaud her for the good work that she's done. I think one of the things that we're seeing is that IRCC is really trying to modernize. And they are, whether it's virtual ceremonies or online portals using AI. I'd like all the witnesses just to talk a little bit about, how this new modernization is working. And if you all had one thing that you wanted to do, one thing that you could change, one technology that you could, one procedure you could change that would make a difference in speeding up these long backlogs, what would it be? I'd really like to hear what you have to say. Any of the witnesses can answer, and all of them should answer, please.
Bonjour. En fait,
hello. We believe that customer service and communications that is respectful of clients and their legal representation should be implemented at IRCC. Currently, we can only communicate by web form, and this is a system that's clogged up. It takes about 2 months before a communication is processed, and sometimes a decision on a file may be made when the information needed is in the web form and hasn't been seen yet. The application, if refused, is subject to a case review, also through the web form, when the problem could be solved immediately. What we suggest is that in the portal, we have the option to update the file. That would unclog the system, and we could ensure that each file is always up to date. These case reviews greatly clog the system. We need to wait for each application to be reviewed, and then the officer may request more information. We need to be able to access that file to provide the additional information.
Okay. Any other comments from the other witnesses?
I can go next. I agree that IRCC, there has been a trend with moving towards online submission of applications, which I think is convenient, definitely, but there also should be an option for paper applications. Through my work that I do with newcomers, I see that many applicants actually with strong technology and literacy and English language skills find it very easy and convenient to submit their applications online. But we can't forget about individuals with low English level, low literacy skills who simply struggle with that, and they should have the option to continue to do so on paper and hard copies. In terms of one, I guess, recommendation or one major suggestion I could say is very similar to the previous comment as well. Having contact, having customer service, having an email or a phone number where applicants can simply connect with an agent. Because as I mentioned in my opening statement, there is a phone number, but it's impossible to connect with an agent and receive an update. The web forms, they have been helpful, but they do take some time to receive response, and they can clog the system as well. So really allocating more staffing resources in the call center, so where people can call and receive information, would definitely be very helpful.
You have 20 seconds, Mr. Benson.
Mr. LeBlanc, do you have any from a business point of view? I'd be really interested in hearing your thoughts on how you would take a business point of view of improving the efficiency and productivity.
Mr. Benson, I don't see Mr. LeBlanc. I think he has left.
Okay. Well, then I'll wrap it up right there then, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Benzon, and thanks for your trust in the chair. We will now proceed to Mr. Sidhu. Ms. Gagne, you have a question. Time is up for Mr. Benzon, so we will go to our next member, okay? So we will proceed to Mr. Sidhu. Mr. Sidhu, you will have 5 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be splitting my time with my colleague Marie-France Lalonde. I just wanted to make sure that, I understand the Immigration Minister and IRCC are working hard to look at efficiencies, as mentioned by my colleague in the previous question, at IRCC to streamline many processes. This morning, Minister Fraser made an announcement that international students will be able to work more than 20 hours a week, which will assist and help businesses on the ground. As we heard from our witnesses here today, that businesses need support, they need labor, and we see help wanted signs almost on every main street across the country. And this is one innovative way to help our economy and businesses. You may ask how? Well, today's announcement means that over 500,000 international students will be able to help grow our economy and businesses. So I think that's very important to mention, and it's a great decision taken this morning by the Minister and IRCC. Miss, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, so I'll try my best. Miss Irina Sampasat mentioned many challenges. As you know, Canada is a top destination for individuals all over the world, and it's good to be at the top. However, this presents many challenges given the exponential growth in applications, and there has to be innovative approaches, and Minister Fraser has already put into place many solutions, but of course there's more to be done. And so I know there was a question that we were cut short in the previous question period, but Ms. Gagnon or Ms. Sampasat, if you can want to speak to that in terms of innovative approaches that you think should be put into use.
Madame Valois.
Oui, merci. Alors,
thank you. I wanted perhaps to follow up on what my colleagues said. We've seen that immigration for asylum seekers, well, there's been a new portal set up for them, which, if that could speed up their applications, that would be great. Currently, it's 1 year. There's a 1 year delay. The IRCC created a portal then that was announced the day it was launched. It doesn't work at all. There are technical problems. What I'd suggest is that when IRCC has an idea, and could be a great idea to have a portal, to at least test it ahead of time and ask for feedback from us. Obviously, asylum seekers aren't always perhaps able to work with the portal. This can be very complicated for someone who doesn't speak French or English, and the technology might be difficult. I think we need better communications with partners in the field.
Madam Chair, I'll let my colleague, Ms. Lalonde, jump in.
Ms. Lalonde, yes.
Merci beaucoup et encore.
Thank you very much, and I'd once again like to thank the witnesses that are here with us. I'm keen to hear what level of permanent residency would be ideal to. I've asked other witnesses this same question. This is specifically with regard to Quebec. And this question is for all witnesses. What level of permanent residency status should be the target?
Who would like to comment?
En fait, je suis pas certaine.
I'm not sure I understood the question correctly. When it comes to asylum seekers, Canada can't set targets. Obviously, asylum seekers, we have to process the applications that are on in Canada. As for other applicants, we can't really have a position on this question. This is a political question. What we can say is that more officials should be working on the immigration file to process the applications. Immigration candidates pay to have their file processed. There's a real waiting list, and this is not acceptable when it comes to customer service. My question, well, perhaps there's a misunderstanding. We can't process more Thank you. Your time is up.
Time is up. We will now proceed to Mr. Brunel Duceppe.
Mr. Brunel Duceppe, you have 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Finally, thanks again to all our witnesses, and sorry for what you've been through. It wasn't great. I have a question for Acadie. You didn't have a chance to go through all your proposals when you gave your opening comments, so I'll give you the chance to do so now. What interests us here at the committee is to hear from people like you who work in the field, who see the genuine problems. This is your day-to-day work, and we'd like to hear what your proposals are so that the delays are shortened. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. As we said, the web forms are not really functional when it comes to management, file management. We think each file should receive a number, and Immigration Canada should publish on its site every single day and every week which file number is being processed. That is how far the file processing has come for that day or that week. That would enable us to see if a file has been processed or not. There are not just processing delays, but there are also waits after that between the processing and the response. Having these numbers published on a website would allow us to see how far the files have advanced. And this goes along with our idea of having a first-come, first-served approach. We also talked just now about having the possibility of updating the file in the web portal. This is what we can do in the legal system. We can update a file in the portal. We'd like to be able to do the same thing with IRCC, be able to update each application through the client's access or through the representative's access, the legal representative's access. That's pretty well what we propose. Thank you very much. As we've been studying this question, we've talked about the lack of transparency from the part of the department, no matter what study we've undertaken. Have you experienced the same thing, and do you have any solutions? Have you seen the same thing? Yes, indeed. We have noticed the lack of transparency, the lack of foreseeability. There are decisions made. We have no idea why. They don't take into account the evidence that was submitted, and then we must justify the decision to our clients. And we don't have any contact person. We can only go through our MPs, and we're making them work for us. They're clogging up the system. And you also have to submit web forms. If there were one single ombudsman or commissioner that oversaw all the work of IRCC, that role would be a sort of a watchdog role, and we would be more confident. We would have more faith in the system. What we're seeing is applicants with similar files are receiving different responses. It's very difficult for us as lawyers. The decisions don't make sense. Question: have you noticed that there's an increase in the lack of transparency with regard to refusals? Well, really couldn't talk about an increase, but we're clearly seeing in the field that there's a lack of consistency when it comes to decisions. Sometimes the decisions don't even concern the application that was made. Sometimes a work permit application is refused when the person applied for a study permit. Sometimes the decision concerns a different program. Thank you very much. Do I still have time, Madam Chair? 8 seconds. All right. Thank you, all witnesses. It was a pleasure to hear what you had to say. Thank you for the invitation.
Proceed to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you will have 5 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses as well for their presentations. And I apologize for the delay in getting the matter going. I'd like to ask the representatives from LUSO Community Services this question, because you raised, I think similar to the other witnesses, the significance of the delay in processing and what it means. And oftentimes, the government does not even follow their own processing standards. And if you look at the website right now, they don't even give you a time, only just to say that, don't expect your application to be processed expeditiously. So given that this is a situation, I wonder what you think the government should do, or what your recommendation is for the government in addressing this crisis in processing delays within immigration.
Well, I think consistency with processing times. I think a few of us, the witnesses mentioned that there is inconsistency because some applications are processed faster than others for not really any particular reason, and that communication is not available for applicants. So as I mentioned, we have seen recent applications being processed much faster compared to 2019 and 2020. So just keep that trend going, but really focusing on the backlog of all those applications who are sitting in the inventory as well. So I think just allocating staff and resources to specific applications and focusing on getting those processed will help reduce that backlog, as well as training for staff as well, and just hiring more staff as well to be available for applicants to be able to receive information.
One of the things that the government has done, of course, is that when they say they've hired new staff and set processing standards, is for new applicants coming in from that day going forward. Is not for the people who's already in the queue, who's already been waiting for a year, 2 years or longer for their application to be processed. Do you think that's right? And if not, how do you think the government should address that, those who's already applied and waiting?
Well, I think that, yes, all the new employees who have been hired to focus and to work on all the immigration applications with the goal of reducing the backlogs, there should be designated teams, right? So really just forming separate teams to focus on specific issues. And that way, the older applications would also be processed as not just left in the inventory without attention.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the same question to Ms. Gagné, because I'm sure that you're seeing that in the system. And what's your response? Should the government be processing new applications and then be able to say, oh, look, we're meeting standards, but then all the people who's stuck in the backlog are just waiting and waiting?
Exactly. The government should say, for example, within 6 months, the entire backlog will have been processed, and it should have the resources to do so. Currently, the resources are being devoted to new applications, but the backlog is not being handled. That 20% I spoke of, we don't know what's happening with those applications. There should be very clear guidelines from the government. For example, within 6 months, the backlog will be eliminated. And then we need to see if this deadline is met.
Now, one of the issues, is my time up, Madam Chair?
You have 1 minute and 10 seconds.
Thank you. One of the issues is the lack of transparency, really, and people actually don't really know why their application's just been rejected. Often the government just cite that we don't believe you're going to return to your country of origin, even though there's ample evidence to indicate otherwise. So, Ms. Gagné, I wonder what's your response to that and what your recommendation is to address this issue.
First of all, the grounds for refusal should be clearer. The responses are generic right now. We don't understand what's going on. We don't have enough information. The immigration officer's notes should be presented. The grounds should be given. More info should be given other than, for example, your financial situation is uncertain, or we don't think you'll be going back to your country of origin. Because right now we're seeing that similar applications are receiving different responses depending on the officer. So it would truly be to give detailed information and clear guidelines on what is needed, for example, financially, to be accepted. Right now, it's at the discretion of the officer.
Sorry for interrupting. Time is up for Ms. Kwan. And with this, this panel comes to an end. And on behalf of all the members of this committee, I really want to thank and apologize to all the witnesses for the delay. And sometimes if things are moved, we have to deal with them before we can go to the witnesses. So really want to apologize for the late start and lesser duration that we can talk. But thanks a lot. If there is anything you would like to send to the committee, which you have not been able to bring today, you can always send a written submission and we will take into consideration when we come to the drafting of the report. So with that, this panel comes to an end, and I thank once again, and I will suspend the meeting for 2-3 minutes so that the Madam Clerk can do the sound checks for the next panel, and then we will come back. Thank you. The meeting is suspended. Madam Clerk, if you can do the sound check so that we can begin the next panel. Thank you.
Merci, au revoir.
Merci. Good afternoon.
Today, As we start this second panel, I would like to welcome our witnesses for today, and I want to thank them for their patience for that delayed start. So today, in this panel, we are joined by Canadian Association of Professional Immigration Consultants, being represented by Dory Jade, the Chief Executive Officer, and he is present in person. We are also joined by the chair of their board, Ms. Evni Marfatia. Our second witness for today is Deacon Rudy Ovjek, the director for the Office for the Refugees of Archdiocese of Toronto. So welcome to all the witnesses for today. Thank you for joining us, and sorry for the delay. We will begin with Mr. Jade. Mr. Jade, you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, committee members, it is my pleasure to come before you as a witness on the issue of application backlogs and processing times. CAPIC represents over 4,000 immigration and citizenship consultants who represent thousands of clients and applicants before Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada. Joining me today is Mrs. Avni Marfatia, who is the chair of the CAPIC board and who is a practitioner as an immigration consultant for over 20 years. Il me fait grand plaisir d'être devant vous aujourd'hui.
I'm delighted to be here with you today, especially in person after all this time. And I am joined today by Avni Marfatia, the chair of the board of the Canadian Association of Professional Immigration Consultants.
Has made a significant impact on processing times and operational delivery on immigration applications. The processing system is not yet back to full capacity. As a result, the demands for temporary residence programs continue to rise, while with more than 30% in 2000, more than 30% than 2019 levels. More than 70% of the backlog consists of temporary residence visa files. The backlog continues to grow, increasing the stress on the system, with now more than 900,000 temporary files in the backlog. Some IT systems, as you have probably heard, are new and have issues and require time to be tested. As a result, multiple applications are filed for the same benefit. So they are multiple counts. Applicants are facing extraordinary delays in processing time and is jeopardizing their future. And the shortage of labor is causing economic stress for employers. Consequently, the immigration system integrity is threatened. As desperate applicants continue to look for other options, the pressure on the system should be urgently alleviated with the introduction of these non-regulatory measures. So what we recommend, so CAPIC recommends the following. 1, declare some countries as visa exempt for short-term visitors. 2, use enhanced ETA to control security and monitor and monitor intentions. Reinstate a high command NOC, high in demand NOC list for LMIA exempt. Implement the SDS, which is the student direct stream for all student study permits applications. Automatic issuance of postgraduate work permits for successful completion of studies. The minister today got a decision in the right direction. Our recommendations include measures that can be implemented promptly to reduce the backlog and improve efficiency across the entire system. Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. I can answer questions in French and English. Je pourrais répondre à vos questions.
I can answer your questions in French or in English.
We will now proceed to Office for Refugees of the Archdiocese of Toronto, being represented by their director, Mr. Deacon Ovjek. Mr. Ovjek, you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. You can please begin.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. By way of introduction, I just wanted to indicate the participation of the Archdiocese of Toronto's participation in the private sponsorship program. We are the largest sponsorship agreement holder in Canada and have been involved in the PSR program since its very inception. We have been able to address the plight of refugees from many different faith backgrounds and nationalities because of the generosity of Catholics throughout the Archdiocese of Toronto, and because of the vision and the values of the Church and of our Cardinal Archbishop, and a response that is rooted in love of neighbor, that finds its source in our love for God and in His love for us. I would like to begin my comments by first recognizing the important work that IRCC has done to reduce the backlogs and processing times prior to the pandemic. I believe at that point, average processing times for the PSR program were reduced down to approximately 1.5 years, a remarkable accomplishment, which I'm confident that IRCC will be able to repeat. Unfortunately, the pandemic has had a very deleterious effect on both the backlog and processing times. All throughout the pandemic, private sponsors were able to continue to submit cases to IRCC, and at the same time, IRCC's overseas processing of cases slowed to a trickle. The resulting increased backlog, and it was significant, was exacerbated by Canada's commitment to resettle 40,000 Afghans by 2024. And private sponsors were asked to assist in this work through the Operation Afghan Safety Program. In addition to the direct increase in backlog from private sponsors participating in the OAS program, I'm concerned that the situation will be made worse if IRCC resources used to process private sponsors' applications are redeployed to process Afghani cases in order to meet that target. Now, I'm here as one that has supported the OAS program, and the goal of helping Afghani refugees is laudable, as is the desire to assist those displaced by the war in the Ukraine through the QIT program. The impact, though, of a decision to redeploy resources, if such a decision has been made, will lead to a significant increase in backlog and processing times for all other refugee populations, many of whom have waited in the queue for many years, living oftentimes in very intolerable conditions. This ought to raise the question for us about how fair and equitable that such an approach is to other refugee populations. And I'm afraid that we have learned very little from the approach that was taken during the Syrian refugee crisis, where an enormous resettlement target of 25,000 Syrians was set, and whose processing was done at the expense of all other refugee populations who had their processing times extended for an additional year so that this target could be met. These extraordinary resettlement targets are fine, so long as they are adequately resourced and are not resourced at the expense of other programs or other refugee populations. As an indication that such a decision to redeploy resources has been made, sponsorship agreement holders have experienced a significant delay in their annual allocation, which IRCC normally provides to SAWS by the end of February of each year. This allocation obviously indicates the total number of refugees that a SAW is able to submit sponsorship applications for in that year, and oftentimes signals when SAWs are able to begin submitting applications to IRCC. This year, we received the allocation not at the end of February, but by towards the end of July, 4.5 months later than normal. And with the exception of 25 spots released in early 2022, SAWs were unable to submit applications to IRCC until the release of the annual allocation. This delay places incredibly enormous pressure on SAWs to process and submit applications in the remaining 5.5 months, essentially condensing a year's worth of work in 5.5 months. This enormous pressure placed upon SAWS has been exacerbated with the release of the Program Integrity Framework and the new set of requirements for SAWS to complete a very onerous 34-question survey that is primarily focused on documenting policies and procedures that the SAW undertakes. While time today in my submission will not allow me to permit me to comment on the many concerns that SAWS have expressed regarding this new framework, I would like to highlight that the timing of this rollout in the midst of this already reduced processing period is of great concern for most, if not all, SAWS. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks. And again, extend a thank you to the committee members for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. We will now proceed to our round of questioning, and we will start with Mr. Jennis. Mr. Jennis, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to both of you for your testimony. I will be sharing my time with Mr. Redekop. Deacon Rudy, I want to put something to you and get your feedback on it. It seems to me that we have this challenge where there are crises in the world. The public is moved justly by images from those crises. The government makes commitments in terms of resettlement. Resources are moved from other places to that resettlement. The problem is that this public policy response isn't increasing the net number of vulnerable people who are helped. It's simply moving resources around. And there are people with long-standing challenges who are not in the top line in terms of the news, and therefore they're actually getting bumped down. So what we really should be thinking about is not moving resources around, but how we help more people. And then related to that, the government will always tell us when we ask this question, no, we can help this, we can fulfill these new commitments without it negatively affecting people in other places. But it seems from what you're saying that your consistent experience has been that if the government comes out and says, hey, we're going to help 20,000 people over here, that is going necessarily to draw resources from other places, which will expand backlogs and reduce the number of people at least in the current time frame that can come. What's your reaction to that?
Well, that's exactly right. That is what happened during the Syrian refugee crisis. Essentially, what my understanding is what took place during that crisis, in order to meet the 25,000 target, they moved visa officers away from many of the posts and had them go to Lebanon, Jordan to process Syrian applications, essentially stalling all the other applications, and many of them had been in the queue well before the Syrian crisis took effect. And so it's a question of equity and justice. I mean, we want to be fair with all refugee populations, and not because one refugee population is has the attention of the Canadian public, not to place them ahead of the queue. So this is why I've argued for, if such targets are to be set, and sometimes there's a reason to do that, that additional resources are deployed and not moved from supporting other programs or other refugee populations.
Mm-hmm. I'll just say the government says they do that, right? They say in all these cases when we ask the question, but your experience is consistent with every other witness who is not employed by the government in saying, no, there is an impact. We're not just bringing a bunch of new resources on stream, but they are being drawn away from other places.
Yeah, absolutely. That is our experience and the experience of all SAWS.
Mr. Redekop, over to you.
Thanks. Deacon Ovjak, I also want to quote something that I found in an article on your website. It says this: the protection of persecuted Christians is not at the summit of the Canadian government's priorities. This was glaringly obvious to me as I attended the Summit on International Religious Freedom. Sadly, Canada was missing in action. No high-level government representative was in sight. That was from an article that was on your website. My question, I have a serious question about that. I'm concerned that even though there are many persecuted Christians around the world, Syria, for example, has many, relatively few Christians are immigrating to Canada. Do you have any thoughts as to why this may be?
One article that I often referred to, and there's not a whole lot of data points out there, and I think that's purposely done. In 2016, the Wall Street Journal published an article that looked at the 12,000, and granted, it's a bit dated, but again, it's a very limited data set. They looked at the 12,800 Syrian refugees that were resettled to the United States under President Obama. And what the reporter looked at is they found that less than 0.5% of those that were resettled were Christian, despite the fact that the Christians represented 10% of the Syria's pre-war population, despite the fact that genocide had been committed against them. So there was a significant underrepresentation that was taking place. And the reporter did kind of look at the root causes, and they did indicate that there was a number of causes for this, but the key cause was placed at the feet of the UNHCR.
Sorry for interrupting. Time is up for Mr. Redekop. And
was that 5 minutes or 6 minutes, Madam Chair?
Oh, sorry. It's 6 minutes. Yeah, please go ahead. You have. Sorry for that, Mr. Redekop.
So the U.S., as does Canada, relies upon the UNHCR to refer refugees to them. So my reading into that is that there is a problem with their referral program. And so what I would urge Parliament and this committee to take back to Parliament is that a study analysis be done. Transparency is required of the UNHCR to ensure that they are fairly representing all the persecuted religious minorities, Christian, Yazidi, and Ahmadiyya Muslims in Pakistan, that they're all being fairly and adequately represented in the GARB programs.
Thank you, Mr. Ovchak.
Thank you, Mr. Redekop, and sorry for that. It was just the last rounds or 5 minutes. So we will now proceed to Mr. Ali. Mr. Ali, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank our witnesses for taking the time out to give us the benefit of their knowledge and experience. My question is for Mr. Rai and Ms. Jade about the online applications. You have both working in this field for several years. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience with the processing of permanent residence applications? Having the permanent residence portal, do you think it's improved processing of permanent residence application? What are the benefits to have this online portal?
Can I respond for?
Thank you. I'll defer to Avni. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dori. Thank you, Madam Chair and the committee members. So being in practice for 20 plus years and the AR portal coming into practice from 2015, it has surely decreased the processing times of PR applications pre-COVID. So the time that was given for within 6 months was duly processed within 6 months or less, unless there was some issue with the application. But during the COVID times and after COVID, the pandemic times, we have seen that there is extreme delay in the process. And there are some applications that are processed in 15 months, 18 months, 2 years, and they're just waiting for background checks. So rest of the information is completed, but they're just waiting for the background checks. So that's my experience.
Thank you, Ms. Fathia. Yes, Mr. Jade, you talked about study permits extensions. As you know, Minister Immigration just launched today, announced that temporarily lifting the restriction from international students' working hours. And we're also piloting automatic study permit extensions program. So what do you think of that?
Well, thank you. First, it's a decision in the right direction, as I mentioned in my opening remarks. However, we even recommend further If a student comes to Canada, you would probably know that the student is authorized or can have the right to apply for a work permit 1 year or 3 years after his graduation. So if you go backward a little bit, several years, we have been advocating for Canada, for example, to get a visa similar to the US with less security issues of 5 years or 10 years. It took 15 years for the government to take this decision. They used to give visas for 1 month, 15 days, a multiple entry, one entry, things like that. So now it is much better in terms of processing, and the security level is the same. So here we're saying the same. When someone wants to come to work, to study in Canada, the person is highly likely to work in Canada for 1 or 3 years after graduation. So why do we want to add burden on the system and ask the individual to submit another work permit application? The individual or the student has already submitted an application. He became a student, and now he can continue working afterwards with the same permit, extended another 3 years. Same has happened also with the work permit, study permit. Before those days, if you recall, probably many of you were here 10 years ago, you used to submit for a study permit. After the student comes here to study, then you submit a work permit if he wants to study off campus. So those need to be removed, and it should be removed faster than it has been.
Thank you, Mr. Jade. You also suggested that temporary expansion of the list of visa exempt countries as a method to deal with the backlog and processing times for TRVs. How would you see that working, and how would you close that list again after it had temporarily been expanded?
Yeah. You probably also are aware that anyone coming to Canada without a visa still requires to complete an ETA application or form. Approvals are very, very fast. Within 72 hours, I think over 98% gets approved. So if we get, for a short period of time, till the backlog, because as we mentioned, if you dissecate the backlog, it's over 70% temporary. So what will happen is many individuals willing to come to Canada would go through the ETA if the country is exempt, and you can have something like ETA enhanced. For example, a country where you should have an ETA and you add to it, for example, 2 pieces of information. One is for security, like a police certificate that is recent within, let's say, the last 5 or 10 days, and another document about financial capacity to come for a short period of time, visit Canada. So this is how we see it implemented on the ground.
Thank you. And just quickly, I would just ask your thoughts
Mr.
on...
Ali, you just have 5 seconds. So.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Time is up.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ali. We will now proceed to Mr. Brunel. You can please begin.
You have 6 minutes, Mr. Brunel Giuseppe. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to all witnesses for this extremely important study. Mr. Jade, I was listening to what you said. This question of visas, a single visa for students so that they could work immediately after studying. The problem is that too many applicants can't even get a study permit because they're told, well, they may end up staying in Canada afterwards. Isn't that contradictory? Those who are accepted are allowed to apply for a work permit, but at the same time they're being turned down. Well, that's what's called a double intention, the idea of studying and staying to work. That's not exactly how it works. There's probably a lack of technical understanding. It's an outdated concept. Maybe the law needs to be updated. This concept of double intention really means that you stay longer in the country without applying for the work permit. And the officer, according to law, is allowed to make a decision at their discretion, can say, well, I think that you're intending to stay longer than your permit allows. In our opinion, and we've already told IRCC this, we feel that this is just a way, this is an outdated approach that should be reviewed. And that affects the IRCC delays because there are two applications. All right, we'll remember that, and that can be in the committee report. Sitting after sitting, meeting after meeting, every single witness has said there's a lack of transparency at IRCC. You mentioned that it was opaque. At some point, we need solutions. I don't think we should be blaming the public servants. There's something structural, perhaps systemic, institutional, and perhaps we need to review this. All right, I'll give you a very clear answer on your question. A few years ago, well, the system hasn't truly changed. It's just that the opacity, it's become more opaque pre and post-COVID. It was the same before COVID, but the access to information system was less clogged. That means we could easily obtain information within 30 days through an access to information request. Now it may take 2 years to receive information. There would be a very simple solution. There, with a system, with the right system, the applicant could receive a response, and at the same time, the reasons, the grounds for this refusal would be stated. Because every single immigration officer must put in writing why a refusal has been given. And if someone had access to this information, that's logical. Yes, and often it's only a matter of a document that's perhaps missing, or the financials are not solid enough. Or perhaps currently the reason is just, well, we don't think you're going to go back to your country of origin. And simply out of an interest for transparency as well, these grounds could be given. Quickly, people have talked about creating an ombudsman position at IRCC. Not everyone agrees, but most witnesses have been in favor of this proposal. I don't necessarily want your opinion. I would like to hear your opinion, rather. This idea should be examined properly. There is one inconvenience in the law. Currently, the law gives a great deal of authority to the immigration officer. And perhaps an ombudsman would allow you to keep this independence. Currently, the law says if you're not happy, you can ask for an appeal or you can submit another application. And it's much more difficult to appeal a decision. It's very costly, excessively costly. Or rather, there would be additional costs. I don't know whether an ombudsman would be the solution, or perhaps more openness with the grounds for refusal, why the decision was made, and at the same time, the possibility to apply again. It's not always a great idea to increase bureaucracy. From what I understand, inaudible. Sorry, we were enjoying ourselves there. Thank you for your responses.
Now we will proceed to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. My question really centers around this. What happens a lot is that the government takes the approach of robbing Peter to pay Paul. So that is to say, they will introduce a new immigration measure, and then without actually providing additional immigration levels or resources to accommodate those new immigration measures. And as a result, you have a huge backlog that would be impacted. And that means that existing applications would be further delayed. And the reality is with the privately sponsored refugees stream, there were significant delays even prior to the Afghanistan crisis. So my question first to Deacon Rudy is this. Do you think that when the government introduces new immigration measures, should they just sort of introduce it without ensuring that there's new resources and immigration levels numbers to accommodate them? Or should they do those special immigration measures with additional resources intact, both levels numbers as well as staffing for processing?
Thank you for the question. And certainly, in my opinion, it would be prudent for, in any of these extraordinary situations like the Afghani or the Ukrainian crisis, where a response is needed and thought important enough for Parliament to act on, then absolutely additional resources ought to be provided. The problem that we've always had is when resources have been redeployed from processing existing refugee populations to now to process the applications of this newly created target, and that's patently unfair to the refugee populations that have been already waiting in the queue for many years and living in very intolerable situations. And so I think the levels plan should be adjusted accordingly and resources should be deployed.
Thank you very much. Yes, there's a way to address that, and that is to do exactly as you're recommending. Now, in terms of additional resources put in place, oftentimes what the government will do with great fanfare with the announcement is that they will say we now have additional resources, and going forward, immigration standards will be met and people will be processed in this period of time. But yet they do not address the fact that there are people in the backlog, thousands of people in the backlog, and they're at the back of the queue because their standards has already been missed. But there's no measure to really tackle that backlog. What do you think the government should do to ensure that the backlog and those who's already applied are just not being left further behind?
Well, I think it's important to have almost a first in, first out. So first come, first served basis. So the applications that have been, and we have applications that have been submitted in 2017, 2018 that still haven't been processed. So I think first come, first serve, and as they come in, they ought to be processed, as opposed to, I think the current situation now with the Afghani crisis is that they're put in the front of the queue. So everybody else is pushed back until we hit that 40,000 target. There'll be little movement in the other refugee populations. I think that's what's going to take place. It's early in the process right now, but in our October numbers of arrivals have already decreased 50% from the year prior. And so that's an indication that existing refugee populations have been already in the queue have been slowed.
Could the government not have two parallel processes to ensure that those in the backlog are actually being targeted as well, and given the urgency of the current situation, that they also have another stream to do it? So it's not robbing Peter to pay Paul, but to have two parallel processes in place to address both the backlog and new applications.
Yeah, that's a brilliant approach, and I think that one would be one that I would absolutely support. And I think, and again, that kind of goes back to the point of if you're going to set extraordinary targets, that additional resources need to be deployed and provided for that additional stream.
Thank you very much. Same question for Mr. Dorey.
Well, in answer to this, we have proposed a non-regulatory options, and this is why, if you look at the backlog, it's different sections. While refugee is very important, it is not the largest group. So by reducing the largest group, which is temporary, the largest number of applications, that would lead to resources being available for other streams like permanent residency, including refugees. So this is how we proposed exactly to the government and to IRCC. The fact that you reduce the backlog of temporary will allow you more space. So it's like a big machine that needs to move forward.
Well, because there are different streams, and sometimes for the government to conflate one stream with the other doesn't make sense either. And so therefore, should the government not ensure that there's adequate resources, both in staffing and immigration levels, in place for each of the different streams?
Sorry for
Otherwise,
interrupting, Ms.
there will
Kwan.
always be a
Your time
stream
is
that's
up.
left
Yeah.
behind.
Sorry for interrupting. Time is up. With this, our panel will come to an end. And on behalf of all the members of this committee, I really want to thank the witnesses for appearing on a Friday afternoon before this committee and providing important information. If there is anything you would like to bring it to the notice of the members, you can send a written submission and we will take into consideration while we are drafting the report. And I just want to let the members know that our next meeting will take place on Tuesday, October 18th, where we will have one panel on the application processing times and backlogs. And then we will have a subcommittee meeting immediately following at 4:30. So with that, I want to wish everyone happy Thanksgiving. I hope all of you will be able to spend some time with your families and thank for all the blessings we have and think about those who need a little extra hand. So thank you to our staff also, who are always there to provide us the support. So hope you will have a great Thanksgiving with all your families. So with that, the meeting will end. The meeting is adjourned.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.